and welcome to another episode of ECCB Connects, a production of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank designed to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. On this episode, Artistic Director of the Grenada Heritage Theater Company, Christopher DeRiggs, joins us to talk about the production Fire to Dance, a theatrical presentation which set the Sir Cecil Jacobs Auditorium in St. Kitts and Nevis ablaze on 27th and 28th September. Stay with us for more after the break.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially.
Thank you for staying connected. Over the past 30 years, the Heritage Theater Company of Grenada has been a powerful voice in Caribbean theater, using the stage not just as entertainment, but also as a platform for education, cultural preservation, and social commentary. On the invitation of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's Staff Association, the theater company brought their production Fire to Dance to the ECCB Auditorium in St. Kitts and Nevis on the 27th and 28th of September. The show was met with glowing reviews. Joining us now is the Artistic Director of the Heritage Theater Company of Grenada, Christopher DeRiggs. Chris, welcome to ECCB Connects.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for being such an ardent supporter of theater.
Great. Share with us a bit about Heritage Theater Company, what you do, how long you've been doing it.
Heritage Theater Company of Grenada has been around for about at least 33 years. We started when we were leaving, Grenada, some of us to go to university, and then we continued when we came back from university. But some of the people in the theater company are people who actually I met when they were in secondary school. The theater company Heritage is what you call a repertory company, in that we have had a consistent core of members. Some people actually, they go abroad and they come back. They form families, they come back. Their children come in and act as support staff. So it's a kind of family. We were initiated into theater, most of us, through Shakespearean type productions. So The Merchant of Venice, and Macbeth, As You Like It, The Tempest. We studied Shakespearean plays in school. And then we were introduced to Caribbean plays subsequently. Even at the level of secondary school, we started writing Grenadian plays. It started like one-act plays, and then we gravitated to full-length plays, 2 hours long, and so on, 3 acts or 5 acts. And so somehow convinced ourselves that we had the capability to do it ourselves. And somewhere along the line, the idea reached us that a country cannot truly call itself a country or a nation unless it has its own literature. And so we have produced our own Caribbean plays, and we have staged these plays in many different countries, especially in North America. We have been to New York. We have done about 6 tours of New York, about 6 tours of Toronto, several tours of Montreal. We have been to Miami, Howard University in Washington, D.C., University of Maryland, and so on. So we have taken our theater around. Some of us were in Carifesta in Barbados just a few weeks ago. So that is pretty much, the journey we have traveled as a Heritage Theater Company. And we're glad to be here in St. Kitts.
What drew you to theater in the first place, and what has kept you? You've been there for over 3 decades.
Yeah. In theater, I've been lucky to have been introduced to theater through good teachers of literature. So my former school principal, a man called Mr. H.D. Batiste of blessed memory, he helped us to appreciate literature, to unravel even the most complex, poetry by Chaucer, to understand the structure of the dramatic structure of a Shakespearean play and so on. And he made it interesting. He made it come alive. And that made a difference. I remember one time, I stood outside of the auditorium and looked at a play, Dream on Monkey Mountain by Derek Walcott, being staged on the stage of the auditorium in the school I attended. I was a little boy and somehow maybe I couldn't have afforded the fee to go in and see the play, but I looked through the louvers and I saw, and I was so inspired by what I saw, the magic of what was unfolding on stage. And I think those are the things that sort of drew me. But I've always been interested in the spoken word. I'm a man of words. I feel the imagery and power of language. And so theater for me was an expression of the spoken word. And of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So the stage became the magical arena for bringing words to life.
Great, great. Now let's move to here, your performance here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Fire to Dance, that was met with glowing reviews. What was the experience like for you and your cast to share your art with the people of the Federation?
We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how much theater, is here in St. Kitts. And the Fire to Dance, I think, is a play that resonates not just with the people of Grenada, but the people of the Caribbean. You have seen the play, and so you know that there's a backstory that takes us back to the 1960s, the civil rights movement in North America. And that flowed over into the Caribbean. Many of our intellectuals, references made to Rosie Douglas, who took part in a riot in Montreal in the 1960s. And there's a guy called Kennedy Frederick, a Grenadian national, who actually was part of that riot at Sir George Williams University. Those people came back to the Caribbean. And some of our heroes and patriots and leaders like Maurice Bishop had a kind of a social awakening in England. So that experience of living in the metropole and experiencing racism came back to us in the Caribbean and formed part of the stream that flowed as our history. And so we felt that coming to St. Kitts, which is the Caribbean island, the history should connect. And that should be a note that would resonate with our audiences. However, there are some stories that are universal, regardless of where you do it. For example, as it's the Fire to Dance, as I've explained to audiences, is a story about a young girl who is struggling for self-actualization, right? And she has to navigate a way between expectations. As I said, a triangle of expectations. She wants to dance. Her father wants her to become the lawyer he didn't get to be. And her lover wants her to join him in his quest to change the world. So she was operating between different pressures. And that, regardless of where you go, whether it is in Europe or Asia or the Caribbean, these are, archetypal type situations. And these kinds of, struggles for self-realization is something that's universal. So we felt that there was a certain universality about the themes of the production, which would resonate with the folks in St. Kitts. And I think it happened based on the feedback we have gotten and the reviews we have received.
Chris, productions like Fire to Dance weave history and culture into art. How do you decide what sort of stories to really tell on stage?
I think the stories kind of decided for me. My muse or my source of inspiration is Grenada and the Caribbean. And I believe that our stories are just as legitimate, just as worthy of being told. Whether I get an idea sitting on a bus, or walking through the market, or sitting in church, in fellowship with my brethren and sisters, you get ideas, and some ideas are pretty compelling. For me, so sometimes I never really make a conscious decision to write about a story, or to deal with a certain subject. It just hits me. And I start writing. And then there's a kind of compelling drive that keeps me going until I finish the product.
Now, we know that theater has often been used to confront issues such as inequality, identity, justice. You've written on some of those. What are some of the themes or challenges you believe Caribbean theater, and your company in particular, has been able to address effectively?
I think policymakers, the penny is finally dropping in the minds of policymakers that the creative sector is a legitimate sector that is worthy of all the support that is being given to industrial projects, all the kind of investment promotion that is being done to attract foreign investment and to build factories or to build hotels and so on. That there is a creative sector that is worthy of being supported. In Grenada, for example, the government decided to make the creative sector one of the pillars of economic transformation. And that is an interesting and important development. And how do they manifest that kind of commitment? Moving from policy to practice, they give fiscal incentives, concessions on importation of materials, whether it is for costume making or fashion or musical instruments and so on, right? In a practical way, they run seminars, training seminars to empower people to produce music and things like that. That makes a big difference. You have to create the facilities. You need the national performance spaces. I just came from Barbados, and they built a fantastic national performance center for Carifesta. And they were able to host an African group from Ghana doing a production called Mansa Musa with 120 performers. Wow. And you should see the wonder and splendor of that venue. So challenges, policy support, followed by action. You have to practice what you preach. We have produced three Nobel laureates. Sir Arthur Lewis in St. Lucia for economics, above all things, in the 1960s with his two-sector model. Derek Walcott, one of the premier playwrights that the region has produced, but he got his Nobel Prize for writing poetry. And of course, more recently, V.S. Naipaul. So what does a country with a region with a few million people achieve something like that, to win 3 Nobel Prizes? It says something about the quality of Caribbean civilization. And our athletes are straddling the globe, and our music is all over. The theater arts and the film industry is a work in progress and requires all the love and support it can get.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the governor is on a quest to see theater thrive in our currency union, and that speaks to why you have been in the federation to put off this play here. What would you like to see maybe in the future when you look at theater across our region? What do you envisage?
A commitment by policymakers to put their money where their mouth is. That's the first thing. And a big part of it will be training and empowerment. You must have, at the formal institutions of learning, training. Not as an academic pursuit, but training people to act and produce their own creative works. We need to look carefully at how we give visibility to their work. Are we having the festivals that are needed? Are they properly organized? What kind of incentives are being given to the practitioners of the creative arts? And beyond all that, right, there's a need for the creation of the facilities, the spaces. When I started theater, I performed in school auditoriums. And then I became so desperate to do theater that I was doing street theater under the mango tree in a crossroad on a bridge, right? But sometimes if you live in a place where the physical facilities are not quite good, then the people in the country never get to see you at your best. So we have to create the conditions that encourage people to perform, where it becomes a joy to perform, where the lighting system could just light up the stage and suddenly, it's night or it's a moonlight night, and suddenly there's an enchanting glow on the stage that takes you back 20 years, 30, 100 years ago, right? These are the conditions. The magic of theater has to be created so people can be transported, right, into an immersive feeling as practitioners of the theater arts. And so I believe that, we have the talent, we have to nurture the talent. And that's, it's a partnership between governments or policymakers, private sector, and of course the practitioners of the arts.
What advice do you have for aspiring and upcoming playwrights and people in this industry across our region?
Self-belief is important. If you don't believe in yourself, you won't achieve much. So I think our artists, aspiring artists, whether it is aspiring novelists, aspiring playwrights, musicians, then the first thing they need to do is understand that Caribbean people are a gifted people, and they need to believe in themselves. We who are doing theater now, we're standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. The Derek Walker, the Trevor Rohn, Roderick Walker, that's his twin brother, Eric Roach, Errol John, Errol Hill, Douglas Archibald, Willie Redhead. I stand on the shoulders of these people, right? And in St. Kitts, I had the pleasure of meeting in 1976 a gentleman by the name of Bongson Williams, right? And I got to understand he's something of an icon. I met his two of his children. I was very pleased, very gratified to meet them. And so we must be humble enough to understand that we stand on the shoulders of those who went before us. But we have a duty to reach further. We have a duty to them, a responsibility to honor their legacy by taking it further and be prepared to work for it, and be prepared and understand that you must believe in yourself, because what we have to display is a resilient spirit. And, as I say, great things came out of Nazareth, right? And look at the civilizations that came before us, Greece and Rome, small places, where they have provided, the framework for modern theater and literature and philosophy and science, right? And democracy and things like that. So we have to understand that our smallness is not a factor that limits our possibilities.
Well, thank you very much for being here and for sharing your art, your talent, your great love for storytelling. We appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you and the Heritage Theater Company, continue to do. You've been at it for over 30 years. Right. That is dedication.
Yes.
So thank you again and all the best.
Thank you, Shana.
We have come to the end of another episode of ECCB Connects. We spoke with Artistic Director of the Grenada Heritage Theater Company, Christopher DeRiggs, about how we can advance theater across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Thank you very much for watching. We invite you to join us again next week when we will be back with another program as we continue to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.